So Billy, can you tell me like how this collaboration came to pass? There's a lot of history here.
Yes, there is. And by the way, this is a collaboration, one of the most meaningful collaborations of my career, my life. Um, but it started when I wrote a piece for the Akron Symphony and chorus called Just Like Job. It's based off of a Maya Angelou poem. And I had heard Belshazzar's Feast by William Walton. I was just so knocked out by it. I said, I have to write a choral piece. So it turns out they had their 40th anniversary, and I wrote this piece. And I wanted, at the same time, I had heard the Master Chorale and was blown away by how incredible the Master Chorale was. At the time, Paul Salmanovich was the director. But he was retiring, and I wanted Just Like Job to be performed by the Master Chorale. And someone was telling me about this new young director, Grant Gershon.
Who is that?
That was going to be directing, and I just had to get to you somehow. So a mutual friend of ours, Brian Petzone, put us in touch. And you called me. You had heard the recording of it, and you called me, and I immediately said, "Oh, great! So I would love the Master Chorale to do Just Like Job." And he said, "I have a better idea. Why don't I commission you to write a piece?" So I wrote The Voices of Angels, and The Voices of Angels is was an experience for me, and I so appreciate
for all of
this.
Us. It's so beautiful.
And that's how, and here we are 17 years later, 18 years later, 19 years later, actually, working on this.
Yeah. Can you give like a 30,000-foot overview of In the Arms of the Beloved? Like, what are the big themes of the piece?
Well, the piece was inspired, it's a memorial, a meditation on my mother, basically. And it's written as kind of a requiem, but to me the word requiem connotes sadness and being depressed, like, just at the horror of something. And I wanted this to have those elements, but also have a celebratory element. So I found a poem by Rumi, translated by this incredible translator, Coleman Barks. And it kind of modernized the meaning of Rumi's poem. And the poem is one of the most beautiful poems about death and the afterlife. At points it compares my mom's spirit to like a bird, like a falcon, a nightingale, things in nature. And I thought that was really beautiful. So I took that and that's what the piece is about, basically. It's a reflection on my mother and her passing. I wanted to score it for my jazz chamber ensemble, obviously the incredible Master Chorale, and the great Anna Kiko Myers, whose violin will serve as the voice of my mother.
Wow, that's beautiful. We have sung a lot of your music at this point, Billy, and commissioned a lot of pieces from you, and you have such a beautiful way of writing for the voice, and I'm just curious, where does that come from? Because, do you sing yourself, or how does it work?
Oh, God, no. People would pay to not hear me sing. I'd be in a club and they let everybody in for free and then make them pay to leave. But that's an old joke, by the way. But no, I love the human voice. It's the first musical instrument. And I have two older sisters, Joy and Kirsten, and they were always singing around the house the music and my parents were both school teachers, but had exquisite taste in music, And so I grew up listening to some of the best music and by extension, some of the best singers, And I've always been intrigued by the human voice. I also love the fact that the human, by singing, you can sing musical melodies in an instrumental fashion, but you can also say words which, combined with the shapes of the melodies, can evoke even more powerful meanings to what you're trying to express.
Yeah, yeah. And what about writing for the master chorale? Because, I mean,
Well,
like I say, we love your music and, you know.
It's like, I mean, writing for the master chorale is like writing for the voice of God to me, you know. Wow. If I can be hyperbolic, yeah, it's everything that I write is going to sound better than I imagined. I truly believe. And I also feel like I have the freedom to write any things of any complexity. Harmonic, contrapuntal, structural, metered, rhythmic, you know, sound effects, textural, you know. I feel that anything's possible with this chorus. So it allows me to be able to truly express more closely what I'm thinking, you know, and that's really, it's an honor for me to write anything.
That's beautiful. That's exactly how it feels for us as
Really?
well.
Yeah.
And, you know, I noticed that, I mean, with this piece, you know, writing for the chorale, for the Lyrics Quartet, for your own ensemble, and for Anne Akiko Myers, it seems like you like to surround yourself with like people that you vibe with.
Yes.
And yeah, and I'm just wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah. Well, you know, this piece actually presented a lot of challenges that I didn't expect because of all of the disparate artists that were in it, you know, that will be performing it. So you have the Master Chorale, this incredible world-class chorus, you know, excuse me, and you have an incredible world-class virtuoso violin soloist, right? But then you have a drummer, you have a string quartet that's also world-class. You have a harpist who's able to play jazz and classical stuff, like very intricate technical stuff. Carol Robbins, there's nobody like her on the harp. And you have a guitarist, Larry Kuntz, who's a jazz guitarist, but can play classical also. So you have a lot of Christian Newman and Dan Chmielinsky is the rhythm section. They're very versatile. They can, again, like everybody else, they can straddle the line between European music and European classical music and American classical music, jazz. So the piece is trying to make sense and make all these elements congeal into an organic whole. And so that's a question of structure. You know, I'm always focused on the overall arc and how are people's roles playing into that, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's going to be room for refinement, I think, you know. But just today I finished the piece.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is a landmark.
Yeah, in my life, for sure.
I'm curious because you're also playing in the piece, and what do you see your role as pianist in the structure?
I would think my role is as a couple of things. First of all, my role is my voice as opposed to my mother's voice. There will be moments where Anne and I are doing duets, you know, it's almost like a conversation between mother and son. But also as a glue, like the piano sometimes serves as an obbligato, you know, because there's a lot of contrapuntal things, and the piano can help kind of mesh it all together, you know. Sometimes it's a accompanist in a jazz context, you know, behind a solo. And sometimes it's playing solo by itself. I'm playing by myself, you know. So there are a lot of functions, excuse me, for the piano.
Yeah, well, I got to say, standing on the podium, like the thing I'm looking forward to the most is like when you're soloing and or doing obligatos.
Wow.
Because you're Billy Childs.
Oh, yeah. Who's that?
Yeah.
But the thing I'm looking forward to is hearing the mixture of the voices with especially the voices with Anne soloing above it, and the rhythm section, how it's going to come together.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
One thing that let me ask you, what, you have, I think of this choir as one of the most, it's one of the greatest choirs in the world, and it's fully professional choir, but also it's famous for commissioning new works. When you first came into the helm of the Master, was that an intent of yours to commission, to put it at the cutting edge of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really felt like, I came into the chorale in 2001. It's been a little over 20 years. And during that time, this has been this huge renaissance in choral music and in music for the voice. So I really wanted the chorale to be at the forefront and encouraging composers, including composers who were not necessarily known for writing vocal music, but to really explore that.
Point.
Yeah. And so it's been super gratifying to see that. And, and speaking of composers who write for the voice, the other piece on this concert is Morten Lauridsen's Lux Aeterna. And I know you have a connection with that. And it seems like your piece as well. There's some kinship with Lux Aeterna.
There are so many parallels in this concert, this upcoming concert. The fact that Morten Lauridsen is a dear friend of mine and was actually on part of the committee that accepted me into USC as a composition major. It was like Bob Lynn, Ellis Coase, Morten Lauridsen, Anthony Vazana, and somebody else. Jim Hopkins. And they were all there, and he was part of that. Not only that, but he was an interim teacher of mine, when we were switching to Bob Lynn as our full-time teacher. He taught us composition. And his piece, Lux Aeterna, which everybody knows, is kind of a landmark piece of, choral writing, excuse me. And it's also inspired by the death of his mother, and that inspired me to dig deep and write a piece about, my relationship with my mom, so there's that parallel, and so it's really going to be quite an honor to have a work that is accompanying Lux Aeterna.
Yeah, I feel like these two pieces together, I can just imagine that they're in dialogue with each other. And it's going to be a really, because the audience knows the Lux Aeterna really well. And then to have this new work that is kind of bringing those themes forward into 2023, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, and it's a different... we're approaching the same thing but differently. His text is Latin, and my text is a Rumi poem translated by a translator into modern English. I'm using a jazz ensemble. His has an orchestra, but it's kind of going for the same thing. There's a lot of commonality too.
Yeah, I'm wondering, just maybe to wrap up. What would you hope that the audience would leave the concert feeling? What is the overall emotion that you're hoping for?
I want them to understand my love for my mother. And maybe they can take from that a feeling that they have for their mother or loved one or something, partner, son, whatever. Something that is healing, something that makes them feel better about life and things, you know.
Yeah.
I just, that's what I want. I want to move people emotionally toward a healing place, not toward a bad place. And hopefully we can do that.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Yes.
Billy, thanks.
Thank you.